And again, in continuing with the HRE4M audio files, we're now dealing with the first part of Chapter 2. And in this chapter, we're talking about, in the first half of it, we're talking about this idea of freedom and the capacity to act. In other words, what initiates human actions? Are you free to initiate actions, or are those actions controlled neurochemically, biomechanically? How are actions put into place? So we get into what the first part of the chapter talks about as a way to frame that. They talk about the conceptual framework of action. In other words, using that initial scaffolding of what ethics and morality is, understanding that, we then need to understand that our actions should be governed by this framework of actions, which are basically fundamental questions: who, what, why, how, with whom or against whom, under what circumstances, with what outcome. The intention of this is for you to figure out that this framework allows you to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And what it should do, or should be able to do, is provide you with an opportunity that when somebody asks you what you were thinking when you took a course of action, and the outcome may have not been what you want, or the outcome may be something that people, your parents, other people look at and go, that's not great. If you can answer those questions, those framework questions, you're better able to have some kind of response for why you did what you did. And doing what you did then becomes something you can take full responsibility for. And that leads to the at least up front, the other part of human freedom, because we get into this discussion of agency and being an agent. So those questions allow you to be an agent, and an agent is someone who is responsible for the actions that they take and the consequences, outcomes of said actions. That in turn then becomes agency. We as human beings exercise agency when we can take a course of action and we deal with the outcomes and we move forward. It is not agency, or you're not being an agent, when you take a course of action and then sit down in front of somebody, either an authority figure or someone else, and claim you don't know why you did what you did. You don't know what you were thinking when you did what you did. Fundamentally, that flies in the face of basic human abilities anyway. Now, you may sit there and say, well, it was just everybody was having a great time and I went with the flow. You're still engaging in agency at that point. You're still an agent. You're still willing to go with the flow and potentially abrogate your right to make other decisions because you have made a decision and followed through on a course of action. Now, if that course of action gets you into trouble or generates consequences or outcomes you don't like, you're no longer an agent or being in agency when you then claim you didn't know what you were doing. There's a hope of dodging whatever potential punishment or problems may come your way as a result of that decision. So really, it's important to understand that those questions, who, what, why, how, with whom, against whom, under what circumstances, with what outcome, really form the backbone of being an agent and exercising your agency. You don't ask those questions. You don't take into account those answers. And I'm not talking you have to write them all out. I'm talking you do this in your head. You're going to be hard-pressed to be fully capable of recognizing the freedom you have, the ability to be free. And that's really, at the cornerstone of this. When we talk about understanding your ethics and acting morally, those can't work without human freedom.